It's 2:47 inches the morning. Marcus Hale is lying on the ceiling of his own mind. He hasn't slept. Not really. Not in 3 days. Not since the email arrived. Not since the conversation he keeps replaying. Not since his brain decided without his permission to run the same 6 scenarios on an infinite loop, each one worse than the last. Each one more certain. Each one more paralyzing. He's a 3-4-year-old project manager from Columbus, Ohio. Decent career, good apartment, no visible reason to be unraveling. But at 2:47 a.m., rational men come apart quietly. He's not screaming, he's not panicking. He's just thinking and thinking and thinking, and he can't stop. What he doesn't know yet, lying there in the dark, eyes open, chest tight, is that what's happening inside his skull has a name, an ancient name, and that name has a cure. He doesn't know that in the next 10 minutes, everything he's been doing wrong is about to be exposed. He doesn't know that the Stoics cracked this code 2,000 years before neuroscience confirmed it. And he doesn't know that the technique he's about to discover will be the last thing he ever reaches for at 2:47 inches the morning. This is the story of how one man stopped being tortured by his own mind. And the method that made it permanent? Here's what nobody tells you about overthinking. It doesn't feel like weakness. That's the trap. It feels like responsibility. It feels like preparation. Your brain sells it to you as due diligence, as if torturing yourself with every possible outcome is somehow the same thing as solving the problem. It is not. Overthinking is not problem solving. Overthinking is fear wearing the costume of intelligence. Marcus had been wearing that costume for 11 years. It started in college. Small things. Did he say the right thing in the meeting? Did they misread the tone of that email? Did he make the wrong call on the project timeline? Normal doubts. Everybody has them. But his didn't dissolve the way normal doubts do. His metastasized. 1 thought became 2. 2 became 6. 6 became an entire alternative universe where every decision he'd ever made was the wrong one. By the time he was in his late 20s, the average night took 2 to 3 hours just to settle. 2 to 3 hours lying still, but traveling violently through every conversation, every decision, every possible future catastrophe. He tried the obvious things. Journaling, meditation apps, that one breathing technique somebody's life coach mentioned at a dinner party. He read books, he did the worksheets. He made lists of cognitive distortions, dutifully filled them in. Nothing held, because he was treating symptoms. He had no idea what was causing them. The email that broke him on that particular Tuesday in November was not extraordinary. His supervisor had written 3 lines asking him to revisit the Q4 projections before Thursday's review. That's it. 3 lines, no exclamation point, no emoji, no warmth. 3 lines. Marcus read it 47 times. Not because he's exaggerating, he actually counted. 47 reads across 3 hours, each one extracting a different possible meaning, each one more damning than the last. Was she annoyed? Was this a warning? Was the whole project in danger? Was he in danger? Had he missed something critical? Was Thursday actually a setup for something worse? By midnight, he had drafted and deleted 9 different responses. By 1 a.m., he had mentally simulated the Thursday meeting in 23 variations, most of which ended in some form of professional humiliation. By 2:47 a.m., he was exhausted, terrified, and nowhere closer to sending a single word back. That's when he picked up his phone. Not to check the email again. To read. He'd been slowly making his way through a compilation of Stoic philosophy, Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, Epictetus. Not because he was particularly philosophical, because someone had told him it helped with anxiety and he'd run out of other options. He opened it at random and landed on a single line from Epictetus. Men are disturbed not by the things that happen, but by the opinions about the things. He read it once, then again, then a third time, slowly. The way you read something when you realize it's about you. Epictetus was born a slave, a Roman slave in the 1st century AD, owned by a man named Epaphroditus, who, according to historical accounts, once twisted his slave's leg purely to demonstrate power. Epictetus reportedly told him, "You are going to break it." When it broke, Epictetus reportedly said, "Did I not tell you that you would break it?" No rage, no collapse, just clarity. Here was a man with no freedom, no rights, no physical safety, and he had mastered the one thing that cannot be chained: his own interpretation of events. Marcus stared at his phone. He thought about the email. 3 lines. Neutral. Factual. His supervisor asking for a review of projections. He asked himself, what actually happened? Not what might happen, not what it might mean, not what the worst-case scenario was. What actually happened. 3 lines. A request, a deadline. That's it. Every other catastrophe he'd been living inside for 6 hours, he had built that himself, brick by brick, thought by thought. The supervisor's disappointment invented. The professional humiliation invented. The 23 simulated Thursday meetings all invented. The event was neutral. His brain had made it a war zone. And for the first time, at 2:47 inches the morning in Columbus, Ohio, that distinction landed with the force of something that doesn't leave. The Stoics called it the dichotomy of control. And it is, without question, the most ruthlessly practical mental framework ever constructed for a human being. Here is the whole thing distilled to its core. There are things within your control, and there are things outside your control. Everything outside your control is not your business. Everything inside your control is your only business. Nothing else exists. Simple, brutal, exactly right. Marcus Aurelius, Roman emperor, one of the most powerful men who ever lived, wrote in his private journal every single night, not for publication, not for legacy. For the same reason Marcus Hale was awake at 2 a.m., to keep himself sane in a world that couldn't be fully controlled. In Meditations, he wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Not comfort, not peace, strength." There's a reason the Stoics use that word. Because overthinking is not a thinking problem, it is a power problem. When you overthink, you are attempting to control what cannot be controlled. Other people's reactions, future outcomes, variables that don't yet exist. You are using your most precious cognitive resource-focused thought to wage war on possibilities, shadows, ghosts. And here's the brutal truth. You cannot think your way to certainty. The mind that tries to eliminate uncertainty through more thinking is like a man who tries to drain a lake by drinking faster. The lake is not the problem, the drinking is. Marcus sat up. He took out a piece of paper, not his phone, paper, and he drew a line down the middle. Left column, what is actually within my control right now? Right column, what is not within my control? Left column. He could review the Q4 projections. He could prepare his data. He could write a clear, professional response. He could be ready for Thursday. He could sleep and bring a functioning brain to the work. Right column, his supervisor's mood, her interpretation, the outcome of the meeting, what anyone thought of him, whether the project succeeded or failed based on variables outside his authority. He looked at the right column. He crossed it out. Not metaphorically, he physically drew a line through it, every single item. Not my business. Not my business. Not my business. What remained on the left was not intimidating. What remained on the left was manageable, concrete, actionable, doable, right now, or first thing in the morning. He wrote a 3-sentence reply to the email. He set an alarm for 2 a.m. He was asleep in 11 minutes. What Marcus stumbled into at 2:47 inches the morning is not an accident. It is a precise technique, and it works every single time, not because it's magic, but because it aligns with how the human nervous system actually functions. Here is the exact 10-minute process. Minute 1, stop moving. Not physically, mentally. The overthinking brain feeds on momentum. One thought generates the next generates 2 more. Before you have conscious awareness of what's happening, you are 4 degrees removed from reality and swimming in a scenario that will never occur. To stop this, you must interrupt the chain not by suppressing the thoughts, but by removing the fuel. The fuel is movement, internal agitation, the frantic searching for resolution. Stop searching. For 60 seconds, do nothing but breathe and observe the thoughts without following them. This is not meditation. You are not trying to clear your mind. You are simply watching the way you'd watch cars pass on a highway. You are not the car. You are the observer. Minutes 2 and 3, name the actual event. Not the story, the event. Write it down or say it out loud. One sentence. No interpretation, no emotional language, no catastrophizing adjectives. Just what factually occurred. Marcus's event. My supervisor sent 3 lines asking me to review projections before Thursday. That's it. That sentence ends with a period. Not a question mark, not an ellipsis, not a spiral. One sentence. Factual. Period. Notice the difference between the event and the story you've been living inside. This gap, this precise gap, is where your suffering lives. Not in reality. In the story you've constructed around reality. Minutes 4 and 5. The split. Draw the line, or write the 2 categories. Or say them out loud if writing isn't available. What is actually within my control right now? What is not within my control? Be honest. Be ruthless. Be specific. Most people, when they do this exercise with genuine discipline, discover that at least 70% of what they've been catastrophizing about belongs in the right column. 70%. Of all your anguish, 3/4 is directed at variables you cannot move. This is not a small thing. This means 3/4 of your suffering is optional. Optional. Minutes 6 and 7. Cross it out. Everything in the right column gets physically crossed out. This step matters more than it sounds. The physical act of elimination is neurologically different from simply deciding to ignore something. The hand moving across the paper tells your nervous system, this concern has been closed. We are physical creatures. Thought alone rarely convinces the body. Action, even symbolic action, changes the body's read of a situation. Cross it out. Every item. Minutes 8 and 9. Build the only list that matters. What remains in the left column is your entire responsibility, your entire focus, your entire legitimate domain of action. Now, what is the single next step? Not the whole solution, not the entire roadmap. The single next step that is available right now. Marcus's next step was 3 sentences in an email. Your next step might be making a phone call, finishing a task, getting 8 hours of sleep, having a conversation you've been avoiding. Whatever it is small. It is real. It is yours. Write it down or say it. Commit it to something outside your skull. Minute 10. Accept. This is the Stoic move that separates the technique from ordinary productivity advice. Acceptance is not resignation. This is the most misunderstood word in the Stoic vocabulary. Acceptance does not mean it doesn't matter. Acceptance does not mean give up. Acceptance means I acknowledge what is real and I release my grip on what is not mine to hold. The outcome of Thursday's meeting, not yours to hold. Your supervisor's mood, not yours to hold. What people think about you when you're not in the room, not yours to hold. You grip these things and they consume you. You release them and you become functional. The Stoics called this amor fati, love of fate. Not passive surrender to circumstance, but the radical act of choosing not to be a victim of what you cannot change. One breath and release. Here's why the Stoics were right and why neuroscience, 2,000 years later, confirmed it. Overthinking activates the amygdala, the brain's threat detection center, in a loop that the prefrontal cortex, the rational brain, struggles to interrupt. The amygdala doesn't distinguish between real threats and imagined ones. It fires identically for a tiger in the room and a bad email at midnight. From inside the nervous system, there is no difference. This is why logic doesn't stop overthinking. You can know there's no tiger and your amygdala will still fire, because knowing isn't enough. The body needs signal, not information. The dichotomy of control provides signal. When you separate controllable from uncontrollable and physically eliminate the latter, you are not simply making a philosophical choice. You are sending a specific signal to the nervous system. The threat assessment is complete. The prefrontal cortex regains authority. The amygdala quiets. This is why the technique works in minutes, not months. You are not processing your feelings. You are restructuring the architecture of threat perception. The Stoics didn't have brain scans, but they observed the results in real time, across centuries, across cultures, across every possible level of human suffering. Slaves, emperors, soldiers, philosophers. The pattern held because the pattern is built into the biology. Now, here's where people fight back. Because someone reading this right now is thinking, that's too simple. And they're right, it is simple. Simple is not the same as easy. The hardest part of this technique is not the execution. The technique takes 10 minutes. The hardest part is the moment in minute 5 when you look at the right column and you feel the profound discomfort of releasing it. Because overthinking gives you something. This is the thing nobody says out loud. Overthinking feels like effort, and effort feels like care, and care feels like you're doing something responsible. When you lie awake at 3 a.m. running the same 6 scenarios, part of your brain believes, sincerely believes, that this is how you protect yourself. That if you just think hard enough, long enough, you will achieve certainty. You will cover every contingency. You will never be surprised. This is a lie. A comfortable, addictive, exhausting lie. The right column does not become safer because you thought about it more. The outcome of Thursday's meeting does not improve because you simulated it 47 times. The fear in your chest does not represent real information. It represents the cost of carrying what was never yours to carry. Releasing the right column feels like irresponsibility at first. That feeling is not evidence. It is withdrawal. Push through it. Marcus went to Thursday's meeting. It was not dramatic. His supervisor was not angry. The projections needed one adjustment, a minor recalibration of a third quarter assumption. They discussed it for 12 minutes. His supervisor said, "Good work catching that." They moved on to the next agenda item. That was it. 11 years of 2 a.m. vigils, 47 reads of a 3-line email, 23 simulated disaster scenarios, 12 minutes, one minor adjustment. Good work. This is not an unusual story. This is in fact almost exactly what happens every time. The thing you stayed up for was not the thing. It was never the thing. The thing was neutral. The war was always internal. Marcus still uses the technique. Not every night, mostly not, but when the spiral starts, when he catches himself 3 thoughts deep into a scenario that hasn't happened yet, he pulls out paper, draws a line, 2 columns, left, right, cross out the right. It takes less than 10 minutes now, usually less than 5. Because a trained mind learns what an untrained mind cannot access. The discipline of returning to what is real, what is yours, what can actually be acted upon. Everything else is weather, and you don't negotiate with weather. The Stoics weren't anti-emotion. That's the most persistent myth about this philosophy. Marcus Aurelius grieved deeply for his children, for his failures, for the weight of an empire. Seneca wrote letters to his friends with unmistakable warmth and care. Epictetus spoke of love as a fundamental human obligation. The Stoics were not emotionless, they were undramatized. There is a profound difference. An emotionless person doesn't feel the fear of the email. An undramatized person feels it, acknowledges it, and then asks with complete honesty, "Is this mine to carry? Or am I borrowing catastrophe from a future that doesn't exist yet?" Undramatized people are not cold, they are free. This is the quality you are building when you practice the 1-0-minute technique. Not indifference, not detachment, not the absence of care, freedom. Freedom from the compulsion to control what cannot be controlled. Freedom from the false belief that suffering over the uncontrollable is the same as acting on it. Freedom from the 3-hour loop at 2 a.m. that solves nothing and costs everything. The ancient Stoics called the untrained mind a tyrant of itself. The trained mind, they said, is the only truly free thing in existence. No government can take it. No circumstance can shake it. No outcome can break it. Because it has relinquished the things that break expectations, certainty, the illusion of control over external events, and kept only what is indestructible, the quality of its own judgment, the direction of its own attention, the choice of what to do with this exact moment. This is not motivation. This is not positivity. This is not the instruction to believe in yourself. This is architecture. This is how you build a mind that can withstand a life. Let's be direct about what happens if you don't. The chronic overthinker doesn't just lose sleep. Over time, months, years, the neural pathways that support rumination get stronger, more efficient. The brain literally rewires itself around the habit of spiraling. What begins as a bad night becomes a reflex. The reflex becomes identity. I'm just an anxious person. I've always been a worrier. This is just how my brain works. No, this is how your brain learned to work, based on reinforcement, based on repetition, based on never being shown a different structure. The good news, and this is actually good news, not the synthetic optimism sold in morning routine videos, The good news is that the same neuroplasticity that built the spiral can rebuild the architecture. Every time you practice the dichotomy, every time you draw the line, every time you cross out the right column with discipline instead of avoidance, you are physically changing the brain's architecture. Not metaphorically, not inspirationally, literally. New pathways, new defaults, new reflexes. The overthinker at 2 a.m. is not broken. He is untrained. And training has a timeline. People try this technique and fail for 3 predictable reasons. First, they write the right column and keep looking at it. Crossing it out matters. The physical act of closure is part of the mechanism. Don't just separate the lists. Execute the elimination. Physically, the pen through the paper is not a metaphor. It is a signal to your nervous system. Send the signal. Second, they add impossible items to the left column. Make my supervisor like me is not in your control. It belongs on the right. Be prepared, professional, and direct in Thursday's meeting is in your control. Left column. The difference is outcome versus behavior. You own your behavior. You don't own outcomes. When people collapse under the weight of their left column, it's because they've smuggled right column items across the line. Audit it. Be honest. Third, they use this as a one-time fix instead of a daily practice. The technique is not an emergency tool. It is a practice. Done at the first sign of the spiral, not at hour 4, it takes minutes and ends cleanly. Done at hour 4, it still works, but it takes longer and costs more. Deploy early, deploy often. Make it boring. The most powerful mental habits are not dramatic. They are quiet and consistent. They don't look like anything from the outside. Inside, they are the difference between a man who owns his mind and a man who is owned by it. There is one final element that Marcus Hale discovered only gradually. One layer beneath the technique that the Stoics understood but rarely stated plainly. The reason overthinking is so persistent, the reason it returns even after good nights, even after successful techniques, even after progress, is because most people are using their thinking to avoid feeling. The spiral isn't about the email, it's not about the meeting, it's not even about the catastrophe being imagined. The spiral is about the feeling underneath, the unexamined one, the one that preceded the email, preceded the anxiety, preceded the career. The feeling that says, at its quietest and most honest, I am not certain I am enough. The Stoics were, beneath the framework and the vocabulary, teaching one thing, that your worth is not located in outcomes, not in what your supervisor thinks, not in whether the project succeeds, not in whether you make the right call, say the right thing, achieve the right result. Your worth is located in one place only, in how you conduct yourself within what is actually yours to control. Epictetus, the slave with the broken leg, who was owned in every physical sense, was a freer man than most of his masters, because he had located his worth in the only place it cannot be taken, in the quality of his own choices, in the direction of his own attention, in the refusal to be diminished by what was outside his authority. This is not philosophy as a lifestyle aesthetic. This is not journaling with a wax seal. This is the structure of a mind that cannot be broken. And it is available to you right now, tonight, at 2:47 inches the morning, or at noon, or at whatever ordinary moment your brain decides to go to war with itself again. Draw the line. 2 columns. Cross out everything that was never yours. What remains is enough. What remains is manageable. What remains is yours. Do that. That's all. Marcus Hale is still in Columbus, Ohio. Still a project manager. Still reads Stoic philosophy, not at 2 a.m., usually. Usually in the mornings, with coffee, before the day begins. He hasn't cured himself of anxiety. He doesn't claim that. He has changed his relationship to it. The spiral still starts, sometimes. The brain still reaches for the right column, still wants to grip the uncontrollable, still believes, briefly, that suffering over it will make it safer. Old architecture takes time to fully rebuild. But now he catches it early. He knows what it is, he knows the name, he knows the technique. And he knows with the particular confidence of someone who has tested a thing under real conditions that it works. He told his younger brother about it. His brother was going through a divorce, sleeping 3 hours a night, catastrophizing about custody and finances and futures that hadn't happened yet. Marcus sat down with him, piece of paper, line down the middle, 2 columns. Everything on the right, he said, was never yours. His brother stared at the paper. Then he crossed it out. Didn't cry, didn't have a revelation, just exhaled. Long and slow, the way people exhale when they've been holding something they forgot they were holding. That's it? His brother said. That's it, Marcus said. If you're still here, if you watch this far, I want you to do one thing before you close this video. Not tomorrow, not after you finish your cue, now. Think about the thing that has been looping in your mind this week. The conversation, the decision, the outcome, the fear, the thing you've been turning over at night, grinding against, unable to resolve. In your head right now, draw the line. 2 columns. What is actually yours? What is not? Cross out the right. That feeling you just felt? That's not irresponsibility. That's not giving up. That's the first breath of a free mind. The Stoics built an entire philosophy around this one recognition, that a life spent chasing control over the uncontrollable is not ambition. It is suffering in formal dress. You were not built to suffer at 2 a.m. over 3-line emails. You were built for the clarity that comes after you've drawn the line. Go draw it. If this reached something in you, if something shifted, even slightly share it with someone who needs it. Subscribe if you want more. Not because metrics matter, but because there are people in your life awake right now at 2:47 inches the morning, and they need this. Go find them.